Hello again, everyone. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day. I wanted to share another art process video, and this time I'm going to share what I did to draw the Greek goddess Hekate. So you can see here I started out with a grid. I don't always use a grid, but for this one I was using multiple reference images and photos and other things that I wanted to sort of be able to keep track of and preserve the sort of aspect ratio between them. So I thought a grid would be best. Also, this is pretty early on in my drawing journey again, so I needed that extra tool. But you can see here I worked out the triple goddess kind of aspect of Hekate. So I don't know if you saw it in the initial sketch there, but there's three faces, and I started doing the first one in the center here to kind of orient me. I like to start with eyes and often do lips next, but those elements kind of help me build out the face a lot, so that's where I started with this one. The references didn't have any of this eye makeup and lip makeup and the running down the face and all that kind of stuff, so that was something I was adding as I went, and there's a few points where I think I kind of erased it and redid it because I didn't like how it looked, but I think it ended up turning out nicely. And Hekate, if you know about her, they are sort of this goddess that speaks to like the liminality of things like thresholds and crossroads and chance and what might come next. So I was trying to give her a gaze of something that would kind of imbue that or convey that, at least with the center face here. And then also looking in the different directions, I felt like kind of conveyed that as well. Like there's maybe three different pathways, for example. So I drew a hand there a moment ago. That kind of helped me as well to kind of orient where the rest of the drawing was going. And a few moments ago, you probably saw me sketch out some other stuff because I had a good idea of this sort of crown that I wanted her to have. So here's continuing on with the left face. Again, starting with eyes, working to the nose and the lips and things like that to help me get an idea of what the face would look like. I really liked drawing this one too because it felt like, again, this sort of liminal in-between space, and it felt like they were coming out of that space and emerging on the paper. And even when I had the paper to protect my hand here, it sort of felt like the goddess on the left was, or the aspect on the left was sort of peeking around the corner of the paper as she came out. So it was kind of fun. This drawing took me something like 20 hours. It's one of my longer drawings. I think I really underestimated what it would take to do the beadwork and details in the crown and stuff. And then you'll see here in a few moments, I also sort of decided to put this like portal kind of a thing around the head, which ended up taking a little longer than I expected to, but totally worth it. And by the way, this is still one of my favorite drawings, even though it's a couple years old and it was early on in my process. And this is one of the ones that is most popular at my art booths. And I sell lots of different prints and paper and on metal and on canvas, and people seem to really like this one. Going over here and using a lot of blending to get basically kind of tonality in the face. And nowadays I use makeup brushes for that, and it works really well, as you might imagine. But back then I was just using the little tortillon blending sticks, little wrap paper. So I wanted to add these. It already had a lot of eyes. I wanted to add these other eyes to sort of make an even more supernatural kind of view of them, with the ability to maybe look into the future or gaze into a murky place, or, just to convey a sense of otherness and metaphysicality and all those kinds of things. Magic, essentially. You'll also see I kind of have these eyes like looking kind of all over the place. I didn't want them to be echoes of what the eyes on the faces were doing. I wanted them to look like they were doing something else, looking in different directions, like a bunch of chameleon eyes, right? So I think here is where I start on the crown. And this I thought was going to be really easy. Like just repetitive, like just doing the same thing over and over and over again. But it ended up being really long. I think going here, here I'm going through and erasing some stuff. Probably the grid lines because they weren't really relevant after I drew the faces and the hand. Wiping off with a brush. By the way, nowadays I use a little vacuum. That helps a lot. You know, try to just avoid getting anything wiping the paper too much, but sometimes it can't be helped, especially with eraser marks. Oh, that's right. Then I went in there and I drew the sort of framing of where the fabric of the gown would be. And then I decided about the portal, so I pulled out a compass, stuck a piece of paper on the page so I wouldn't hurt the paper, and then I just did an arc around them so that it would be nice and circular. And here we go with all the beadwork and the crown. This part was a lot longer than I expected. So I'd go through and I'd draw the little elements, the little bead circles, the shadows essentially for where the bead perimeters were, and then I'd go in and darken them, I'd shade them a little bit and blend them, and then I'd use an eraser and a white pencil to pull out the highlights to make them look more gem-like, or I don't know, almost rhinestone kind of like, but I wanted them to pop a little bit, be a little shimmery. You can see I pulled out my trusty magnifying glass there. I do that sometimes. There's a nice light on it so I can see what I'm working on when I use it, but it helps me zoom in a lot. And these days I've started wearing reading glasses a lot of times when I do this because it's a lot more convenient, but I still pull out the magnifying glass every once in a while. Now as you can see, there's a separate magnifying glass sitting right there. You can see the circle light that's in that magnifying glass. That's the light on my other magnifying glass. And if you're doing this kind of detail work, I highly recommend getting some tools like this to help with it. I'm just going through and adding more structure to the crown. Then I went in and started putting more of the hair elements. Went around, added the portal, and took a break from there, I think, that day. This is probably the third day I was working on it, honestly, too. I don't remember how many days I did this over, but you can see it kind of came out nicely, the texture of the crown. So then I did the gown. I really like creating fabric with charcoal. It's really fun. There's a lot of different little techniques you kind of like learn on the way. And every time I do one of these that has fabric in it, I feel like it's a little bit different. So I used a little like hint of shimmeriness on some of these edges on the gown to kind of imply the little folds in it. Went over to use a lot of shadows and blending and all that stuff again, of course. I remember having a bit of a hard time on this sleeve, but it worked out okay. Went around and just added some sort of magic element looking thing. And there's her face. You can see there's an inscription around it too. I'll leave that up to you to look at and see if you can read it. It's in Greek. And then this became the High Priestess card of my tarot deck, my Dreaming Eye Tarot. So you can see it's also on the back of the box sometimes. Depends on the version you get, but they're right here. Well, thanks a lot, you guys. I really appreciate you watching these videos. I'm planning to make more and more, so thanks. See you again soon. Bye.